Welcome back to the Hangar Designs. I'm Daniel. Today we're going to be going over a tool that I designed in Fusion 360 that helps with the design of picture frames. I built a lot of picture frames and this tool's been extremely helpful for every frame that I've built so far. I have a new commission for a frame and I thought this would be a good time to go over this tool and how it works. It's a great example of how a parametric CAD program can be used to assist with builds where the dimensions will often change. The next video in this series will cover the additional details modeled onto the frame, then me actually building the frame. If you find this helpful and think that it'll save you some time for your frames, I will be offering this Fusion 360 file for sale on my website, linked below in the description. The purchase will include all future updates I make to the file. So first thing we're going to do is we are going to cover how to use this tool. As you can see, I've got it open here. The instructions, the main instructions are actually in the file itself, just this text wall. It'll tell you how to use it, but essentially all you're going to do is you're just going to use the parameters. You're going to update the favorited parameters, and that will update all of these sizes for everything that you need. We've got our artwork here, we have our matting, and then we have the frame itself. I have everything in inches because generally when you're talking about picture frames and art, it's mostly all in inches, so that's the way I designed this. But if you want to do everything in millimeters, you can come over here to Document Settings, click on this button here, and change it over to millimeter or centimeter. The only thing that you're going to do for this file is update the parameters, which will update this model itself. And this over here, we will get to what this is for in a second. You do not need to open up any of these components, any of these sketches, anything to have this file work. You can, but you always run the risk of breaking the file because there are a lot of dependencies within the parameters. If you do want to make additional changes to the frame, let's say that you want to add a bevel to the front, if you want to add any chamfers to the inside edges or the outside edges, if you want to add miter keys to the corners, I always do that with my frames. For this one, I'm actually going to add some exposed miter keys that are going to be on the front face. You can do that, but my advice is to copy this file, and in that file, you can make whatever edits you need. Go ahead and set up the dimensions of your frame here. If you're doing this for a client and you want to show them what it may look like, this is always a good idea, and this is kind of the workflow that I take. I will make the edits to get the exact size of the frame, matting, and artwork that we want to go with, that we've agreed upon. And then I will copy this file. And in that file, I will go ahead and model in all of the additional details that I'm going to do. And that way I can present kind of a final render of what this is going to look like. Obviously, if you're just doing a regular picture frame, you don't have to go through all that. But if you're doing high-end work and you're doing something really custom, then I think it makes sense to give that visualization to the customer and to yourself. It's always going to set you up for success when you have a very good idea of what you're going out there to build before you start building. Because as we all know, wood is very, very expensive right now. So better to have a plan going forward than to just jump in there. Or at least I work better that way. That's what I would do if you're going to make further edits. Let's go into how to actually use this file. The instructions, the main instructions are right here on the, when you open the file, it's going to be selected at the most parent component here. That's all you need to do. You don't need to select any of the other components. You don't need to go into any sketches, anything like that. We are going to open the parameters. You can see that I have my parameters up here. It's not like that in stock Fusion 360. So you'll go to Modify and Change Parameters. And you can see that I have set W as my hotkey for that because I use it so often. So I will hit W, bring this back over, and you can see the parameters. And I'm going to move that so that you can kind of see how everything updates in real time. Here you can see there's a lot of parameters in this file. Do not go down, unless you know what you're doing and you don't mind breaking the file. If you're going to play around in here, then definitely make a copy of the file beforehand and then come down here and experiment. But if you're newer to Fusion 360, or if you just don't want to break anything, just stay with the starred favorite parameters up here. And these are going to be all the units that we're actually going to change to be able to get this frame how we want it to be. Let's go through each one of these parameters. I'm going to sort them by name because I like the artwork being first. So artwork height and width, you can see pretty self-explanatory. And I have comments over here kind of breaking down exactly what you're going to want to put in here. But the artwork width and height is going to be the exact dimension of your artwork. So if you have a photo that is 4 inches by 6 inches, you are going to put 4 inches by 6 inches. There is tolerances built in as parameters in here to give you some wiggle room whenever you actually go to build the frame. So don't put the tolerances in your dimensions when you input them here. So you can see right now we have artwork height is 12 inches. We can put that to 7 inches. You can see everything automatically updates. Artwork width, we'll do 4 inches. See how that updates. The artwork overlap is going to be how much the, I'm going to turn on this analysis here so that we can see a little bit better. So that's going to be this dimension here. It's going to be how much the frame overlaps the mat, and then it's also going to be how much the mat overlaps the actual artwork. And this just gives you a bit of space to, tape it on or however you're fasten it. So you can edit that. Right now I have it at 1/8 of an inch, which I think works well. But if you have artwork that goes, almost to the very edge and there's nothing you can do about that, then you can lower this to where there's less of an overlap. Frame thickness is going to be the actual thickness of the wood that you're using for the frame. So right now I have it 1/2 inch. I'm going to be using 4/4 walnut, which is 1 inch, but I will mill it. And after it's milled, it'll probably come down to about 3/4 of an inch. So we can put 0.75 and you can see how it updates there. Right now, we'll just leave that as 0.5. At the very end of this, I'm actually going to show you the dimensions that I'm going to be building. We'll go ahead and input all of this, then I'll show you how I use this file to actually build it in real life. Your frame width is going to be the actual width of the frame up here. Got it at 1 inch. So let's go 2 inches and it adjusts everything. Again, these are different bodies within a component. So these are, 45 mitered frame pieces, as you can see here. And here's your groove. This is called a rabbet when it's cut into the edge of a board right here. And the rabbet is what is going to accept your stack up. So your mat, your glass, artwork, backing board, anything else that you have in there. So we did frame width. Mat width is going to be the exact same thing. So this is your mat, and it's basically going to be how much of the mat you're going to be able to see. So we'll do 1 inch, bring it down. Let me turn off this analysis so that you can actually see the frame. I'll straighten that up. And you can do whatever you want. 3 inches there. We can make the frame width 1 inch. Totally up to you how you're building the frame, how your client wants it, or how you want it. Again, the rabbet depth, we just went over what the purpose of the rabbet is. And let me hide this mat. And you can see the rabbet is going to be what's cut into the corner of the wooden piece to accept the artwork stack up. This needs, and again, I have this in the comments over here, but this should be deep enough to accept that entire stack up that we just talked about. Right now I have it at, so we've got the frame thickness at 1/2 inch. We can change this to, we'll say 0.4 of an inch, and you can see how it adjusts it. So now this is larger. And obviously with a 1/2 inch thick frame, we can only go up to 1/2 inch for the rabbet. If we go to the full 1/2 inch, then nothing's going to be there, and this would probably break. But you wouldn't want to do that anyway. So right now, and you can always go in here as well. If let's say that we had 0.75 was our frame thickness, you can go in here to rabbet depth, and you can put in frame thickness divided by 2. Now, anytime that you update your frame thickness, let's say that it's 1 inch thick, you can see that this automatically updates to 1/2 inch. So you're using formulas in here to give you less work, but I put it in here without a formula because I want the control of knowing how deep it needs to be, because generally I'm just going to make it a little bit deeper than what it needs to be to hold everything it needs to hold. And that will give you, let me show you. So we're going to go back to frame thickness. We'll do 1/2 inch. So you can see it updated to 1/4 inch. And I am just going to keep it at 1/4 inch right now. But you can see right here, we have this amount of meat, which is going to be 1/4 inch, since the rabbit is 1/4 inch. But if I wanted to put a bevel on here, I only have 1/4 inch to work with as far as putting that bevel. So there's no use in having that rabbit extend further than you need, because it's just impeding on how much usable material you have right here, unless that's the design aesthetic that you're going for. And then the rabbit tolerance, let me turn this mat back on so that you can see that. That is the tolerance that I was talking about that will give you some wiggle room. Just in case maybe your dimensions aren't 100% accurate, and you also want to account for the wood expansion and contraction, because that definitely does happen. Not much with a small frame like this, but when you start getting into poster size frames or full framed artwork, I should really think about expansion and contraction. So it's always nice to have a bit of a gap here, and you can center this. You can throw some tape on there, or use the pins, or however you're securing all this in here to keep it tight. But I found 1/16 of an inch all the way around works well. And that's it. That's all the parameters you need to worry about. If you do purchase this file and you think of anything else that is useful, then I can certainly work it into the file and update it in the future. So we did the parameters, we adjusted each one. You can see what they're going to do. I'm going to explain what this sketch feature is now. And again, this is very useful for planning out your build, because when we update these parameters, this is also going to update. These dimensions are for the rails and the stiles. The stiles are the vertical portions, the rails are the horizontal portions. So you've got your rail, stile, rail, stile. So what's cool about this is that whenever we make these adjustments in the parameters box, this will update as well. And this is what I use to plan out the piece of wood that I'm going to need in order to build this frame. I like to build, if I'm building it out of walnut, I want it built out of the same piece of walnut so that everything matches, because all wood is going to deviate in grain color and size and style. So it's always good to build out of the same piece of wood. So let's say that our artwork is, we'll say 12 inches high. We're going to say it's 8 inches wide. We want a mat width of 1 inch. And then we want our frame width to be 2 inches. Since we did all that, the model automatically updated, but this updated as well. So now you can see that if we wanted to get one continuous piece of wood that all had the same grain, then we would need that piece to be at least 64 inches long. And then this is also updated right here for the 2 inch in thickness. So in order to make this frame, assuming that we did it correctly and did not waste any, we would need a 2 by 64 inch piece of wood. This is the most helpful part of this whole design for me, because I am able to I just write these down on a post-it note, 64 by 2, and when I go out into the shop, I know exactly what size wood that I need. And this is cool too, because then you can take whatever existing wood that you have, and you can, write it down, and then come to your computer and do your design, and you'll know whether or not that you have the required lumber to actually build this. This is 64 inches long by 2 inches if you wanted to go continuous grain all the way down. But what you could also do is you could do, one style, one rail down, which would be what, 32 inches, right? And then you could make it 4 inches, maybe five, just to account for, your saw blade kerf and all that. But let's say it would be 32 inches by 5 inches. And then you still have the same grain design, but can be used on a shorter piece of wood. So that's the purpose of this. It's a pretty simple file. There is a lot of dependencies when it comes to the parameters. It's definitely taken me a couple of iterations of this file to get it right, to get it really usable and something that I trust every single time. But this one of my most used files, just due to the work that I do. So let's go through and actually update this with the artwork that I have to frame. So the artwork height that I have is 3 and 13/16. The width is 8 and 3/8. And we want the mat width to be 1 inch. It's already there. And then the frame width to be 1.75 inches. So that is going to be exactly what we need to make the frame. So I'm going to exit out of this parameter box. And you can see that this is updated. So if I wanted to get one continuous piece of wood, it would need to be at least, 46 and 3/8 of an inch. Another thing that we can do, we can hit A for appearance. And you can see that I already have some appearances here, but this is very helpful if you're trying to show this design to the client. You can go into Fusion Appearances. You can come down here to wood, pick out whatever kind of wood that you're going to use. If we wanted to use maple, curly maple, we can come over here, apply it to the frame. We'll remove that. And there you go. So that's what it looks like with the maple. And then same with, I've got just a bunch of regular, just color set up over here, but you can come over here and you can drag that over to the mat. And you can start to get an idea of what that frame is going to look like with certain matting color. Another thing that you can do is you can come to artwork. I I would still advise kind of doing all of this once you start getting into decals and everything. I would copy this file and do it in its own file. It's just a much better workflow, more organized, and it leaves your tool as a tool. But just showing you for the sake of understanding what you can do with this. For the body, we can go to Insert, Decal, and select the decal, and open, and we're going to put it directly on this face. And we'll rotate it 180 degrees. Bring it up, move it around. And place it like that. Obviously spend a bit more time if you're doing this as a paid client work, and then you can hit Control N to turn off the component cycle colors. And there you go. That's already, and you can see that it's already got a glass material on the artwork, so it's got that reflection. And you can even jump over to the render tab and do a quick in-frame render. And you can see the curl in that maple coming through once you actually start rendering it. And once this is done or gets as high quality as you need it to be, you can export this and send it over to the client. And that's a pretty professional way of sending over renders and making sure that you're on the same page before you start the work. That's about it. That is the tool. Again, it is available on my website. If you're already experienced in Fusion 360, you should be able to build this out if you'd like. But for the fee I'm charging for it, I don't think that it's outrageous. And if it saves you 30 minutes, then I think it's well worth the money paid for it. Thanks for joining me. Again, the next video that I do will go further into this frame on what designs that I'm actually going to incorporate in it and the actual build of the frame. So stay tuned. If you enjoy what you've gotten out of the channel so far, please subscribe and like and comment and all that jazz. And if you're looking for any cool gifts or anything like that, head to my website as well. I've got a shop there, couple products, and I'll continue to add to them as I design them. So thank you for joining me and have a great day. Bye bye.